final guests today started at a humble beginnings at the Beerwah Reptile Park in the 1970s, which set the foundations for now what we know of as the world-famous Australia Zoo. The Irwin family's passion for familiarising the world with Australia's nature and wildlife has helped to drive international visitors to travel to our country and to experience what we have to offer. Just this month, at the Australian Tourism Awards, the Irwin family were awarded the prestigious title of Australian Tourism Legends, recognising their contribution to the industry. If I could invite you all please to turn your attention to the screen.
Crikey, what a family of Aussie legends. Over 4 decades, the Irwin family has captivated, entertained and inspired visitors to this country, as well as those who dream to one day visit our shores, by sharing the stories of our wildlife and wilderness areas in their own unique Aussie way.
G'day, I'm Steve Irwin, and these are highly venomous sea crates.
Here we are back at the Queensland Reptile
From humble
Park.
beginnings, this family has, over 3 generations, emerged as Australian icons with a global following of wildlife warriors committed to the conservation and preservation of our natural heritage.
We all need to participate in conservation. We can't take for granted our beautiful wildlife and wild places.
Together, we're wildlife warriors. Dad first came up with that term. You know, we stand up and speak for those who cannot speak for themselves.
In the process, they have become simply the greatest of Australian tourism ambassadors and realised their dream of operating at Australia Zoo, one of the finest wildlife sanctuaries and visitor attractions in the world.
Please, come and have a look at the things we love the most, our animals. Let's have a look.
Tonight, the Australian tourism industry joins together to say thank you to the Irwin family for sharing their lives with us, along with their millions of fans throughout Australia and the world.
Everybody loves you.
We say thank you for their contribution to our industry and the outstanding legacy they carry forward for our country, its wildlife and its tourism industry.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Terri and Robert Irwin.
Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, guys.
G'day. How's it going?
I'm Terri. That's Robert.
I'm Robert. Hello, everyone.
Excellent. And I just, I really want to thank Tourism Australia for kind of looking outside the box. I don't know how many events you've been to like this where you're going to be addressed by a 15-year-old kid, but it was a pretty cool invitation. So thank you very much to Tourism Australia. And I'd also like to share with you a photograph that we have of Australia Zoo. Isn't that cute? That's kind of what it's all about. That's why we do what we do, and that's what makes me passionate about the work that we do and so impressed. It's kind of like a life-changing experience for people, and this was a visitor from South Africa who'd never been outside of Africa before, so her favorite part at Australia Zoo was Africa. I always find that so interesting. I love when farm kids come in and the first thing they do is go to the petting zoo because they miss their little sheep and goats. It's very special. But I wanted to let you know as well, my experience has been that no matter how hard you work on marketing, and no matter how much you try to get the word out, and no matter how many times you think I've told this story 1,000 times before, you need to keep at it. You need to be innovative. You need to find new ways to get the message out about your incredible business in tourism. And the best example I have of that is because Steve and I were lucky enough to do some filming with a documentary called The Crocodile Hunter. And it went in the 90s to 142 countries and was viewed by 500 million people regularly. And it was a big deal in the 90s, and you start thinking that's pretty cool. And I was visiting Japan, and 2 people who clearly did not speak English, and I don't speak Japanese, wanted a photo with me. And they were very excited, and they were pointing at their camera and at me, and I was like, yes, you get to meet me and have a photo, and how lucky are you? And I kept trying to kind of get between them, and they'd move around, so I tried to get next to them, and they'd move around, and then I realized they had no idea who I was. They wanted me to take a photograph of them. So these humbling experiences remind you that you're not actually that big a deal, and we still have a lot of work to do. So it's important to keep that in mind as you're messaging. It seems like you've given the message 1,000 million times, but still not everybody has heard it. When it comes to tourism, I'm passionate not just about tourism for Australia Zoo's case. You know, if people come to Australia Zoo, it helps me pay the bills, and that's wonderful. But it brings me great joy to also be promoting our community and our region and our beautiful state of Queensland, and to encourage people from overseas to see all of Australia. And I think we kind of need to all have that perspective where we all want to be able to pay the bills, but as a person in tourism, you kind of have a responsibility to represent everyone. And that's why we're all here today. There's wonderful opportunities for networking, for working together to get a bigger and better message out. And that really excites me when I stop off at the fruit shop up the road and the owner says to me, I know you're having a big day at Australia Zoo because we're really busy. And that's what's so exciting. I think tourism is about so many things. It's so helpful to local economies, and it's something that everyone can engage in. I know there's a famous photographer named Franz Lanting, and Franz once said, tourism is important because it creates sustainable local economies. I'd much rather have 1,000 tourists going up the Tambopata near Machu Picchu than 1,000 gold miners. And it's true. What is tourism? Tourism is really the ability to have people come from all walks of life, all around the world, to visit you and your region, spend lots of money, and then go away. It's awesome, except for me. I stayed. But it really is pretty cool. It's a great industry. And you know, as our world has become smaller, as people are able to travel further afield and they have different needs and desires for their tourism journey, it's interesting to think about the statistics. For me, because I'm into wildlife conservation and sharing with people and teaching them about wildlife, I find it fascinating that 70% of our overseas visitors come here to have a wildlife experience. So they want to, you know, see our koalas and experience a platypus and all the cool animals that we have here. And all of us kind of do that. When you travel, Robert's a keen mountain biker, so if he's mountain biking at Whistler in BC, I'm checking out the bears, because that's really fun. And for those of you in the LGBTI community, I mean the animal. Thank you. Look how trendy I am, using bear in a sentence. And I think people
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I wasn't either. People from around the world love to go places and experience wildlife. You do, wherever you are. You know, we all have been in Bali and had the monkeys go through our pockets and steal your ponytail and everything else. So
Not my ponytail.
Not your ponytail.
No.
In South Africa, people go there to see and experience wildlife. And we had a conservation situation where there were people who had livestock, and that was their living, to have goats and sheep and cows and things. But then the little woodland creatures would come and eat them, because it's much easier to eat a sheep than a giraffe. So the cheetahs and lions and leopards and various animals would come and eat their livestock. And so what we worked on was a program with the Anatolian shepherds. And these are really big dogs that originated in Turkey, and they protected the flocks in Turkey. And so these dogs have been trained to live with the livestock, and they're like their guardians. And so when the cheetah comes along and goes, oh, there's a yummy snack, and sees the sheep, then the dog comes out and goes, you can't eat these sheep, dude, these are my sheep. And so then the cheetah goes away. So we started working with cheetah outreach in South Africa, and the landowners were saying it's such a big deal because we can get a little bit of money every now and then from people who come in to trophy hunt. So we get rid of the cheetah, we get a little money from the trophy hunters, and it's a really great plan. So we started working with them with the Anatolian shepherds, and we said, if this works for a year and you're happy, then you sign an agreement that you're not going to let anyone kill cheetahs on your property anymore, and you take over the care of the dog. And so everyone tried it, and 100% of the farmers, numbering over 300 now, have had almost 100% success. So then in addition to that, we introduce safari drives. So the safari drives come in and showcase wildlife. People pay a percentage to the grazier for going on their land. The Anatolian shepherd protects the flock. The cheetah no longer gets killed. And now you have a multi-billion-dollar industry for people to go to South Africa and look at wildlife instead of killing it. So that's what's really exciting about tourism as well, is more people are taking photos like you and experiencing wildlife, which is fantastic. Tourism, as we know, is the world's #1 industry, so everyone can be involved in tourism. But what's remarkable is something that's happening now, which is called poverty tourism. And I inadvertently experienced poverty tourism. But what they're doing now is they're taking tours into places that are like slum areas, and people who never had a tourism opportunity are now selling trinkets and getting a percentage from these tours. So we were in LA, and you needed a watch. So I said, let's go to Walmart and get you a watch. So we took a taxi to this little town, and the taxi driver goes, I can't leave you in this town because something bad might happen. And I go, we're in LA. I don't think anything really that bad's gonna happen. Someone might give me a makeover, but I'd be fine. So we got out, and the taxi driver didn't leave, and we walked in, and I picked out a watch and was shopping for some other things. And this lovely woman said to me, I'll put your watch up the front, and then as you are leaving, you can just pay for it with your other stuff. You don't have to carry it around. I was like, oh, thanks, that's really nice of you. So as I was leaving, the woman up the front said, I've got your watch over here, I have your watch. And I thought, how did you know that was my watch? And I kind of looked around, and then I realized I was the only Caucasian person in there, and we'd inadvertently gone to Compton. Have you seen the movie Straight Outta Compton? So we walk out the door, and here's a tour bus. The tour bus is for gang tours. So you sign a waiver that if you are accidentally shot through the window of the bus, it's your own problem, and you tour the gang neighborhoods of Compton. That's tourism. So it's called poverty tourism, but it brings tourists to areas where people are doing it tough and enables them to actually earn a living. Don't go to Compton, though, unless you're in that bus. I like the tourism helping wildlife, like with lemurs in Madagascar. They've learned through deforestation, the lemurs have come in closer to civilization. And people, again, will pay to see the lemurs so they don't hurt them. So that's a really brilliant idea and generates income. It takes very little to generate income. We see people in communities all around Australia that are good at art, photography, storytelling, really beautiful things. And again, I first came to Australia as a tourist. I absolutely fell in love with this beautiful country before I even met the man. And when I travel back and forth from America and people say, it's so far to Australia, and I say to them, it's really closer than you think. It really is. It's one flight. And the people here are so remarkable. Everyone is welcoming and kind and involved and wanting to make sure you have a good time. It's kind of like when I came here in 1991, it reminded me of the United States 50 years earlier, where people were just cooking dinner, do you want to come over? And I loved that. But then I happened to go into this little tiny wildlife park, and I almost didn't go in. I remember thinking it'll probably be a few snakes and a few jars and not really much fun. And then I thought, well, as long as I've come all this way, I'll go in and check it out. So I walked into a tiny little place called the Queensland Reptile and Fauna Park, and I met both the staff, and there were beautiful, immaculate grounds and happy little kangaroos, and everything was so special. So I went to see what they said was a crocodile demonstration. And I thought, how do you demonstrate a crocodile? So I went to see this show, and this guy was in with the crocodile. He was like in with the crocodile, and he was talking about wildlife the way I'd never thought about it before. He said crocodiles are beautiful mothers and passionate lovers. And I'm like, what? And he was talking about them so lovingly, I kind of forgot he was in there. And then this giant croc lunges out of the water, and he gives it a piece of meat. And what was intriguing to me was that it was all about the crocodiles and not this keeper. And they always say when you go into a pub, you can tell who the tiger keeper is, because he'll tell you immediately, if not sooner. Guess who I am? But for Steve, it was all about the wildlife. And so I paid another $6 to go on the environmental park tour, and I learned all about these beautiful animals. And then I screwed up my courage to say hello to him, and that's about all I said was hello. And I really stood out in the crowd because there were like 11 people there. So it's like, hello. And he saw me, and, you know, being only human, he immediately fell desperately in love with me, I'm sure. We actually have a photograph together the very first time we met. And I remember thinking, this is just a life-changing experience, to learn about these animals and see this person who's so passionate, hear the stories that he's telling. And he said, I do crocodile rescue work. So whenever a crocodile's near a boat ramp, if it's small, like 6 feet long or smaller, you know, a couple meters, he said, what I do is I go out on the boat at night and I shine the spotlight. And when I see its eye shine, I idle the boat up to the crocodile. Then I put the spotlight down and spear out of the boat, grab the croc by the scruff of the neck, tuck its tail between my legs, and then you just hang on, because the crocodile immediately takes you to the bottom of the river, and then it sort of wears out, and you bounce off the bottom, flip it into the boat, piece of cake. I was like, who are you? So this is what he did with the East Coast Crocodile Management Program, was to move crocodiles that were causing a problem to another place. And that was his passion and his love and what he enjoyed doing. So needless to say, we ended up getting married. I remember the rose petals and the candles. And no, actually, he said, what do you reckon? You want to get married? And I said, sure. So 6 weeks. About 6 weeks total we'd spent together, and then we were married and came back to Australia. And again, our petting zoo today is bigger than what Australia Zoo was then. So in 1992 we married, and we started filming. We went together to this beautiful place in North Queensland to rescue a crocodile that was in danger of being shot by a poacher, and filmed it. And we thought, well, that's an interesting story, and now we're done. And it just went from there. It was a remarkable journey. And I remember saying to Steve, you know, it's like hiding your light under a bushel. You can talk to the 12 people who come to this zoo every day, or you can expand with filming and do something on a much bigger, broader scale. And he said, I'm happy to keep filming, but whatever we make from filming and merchandising and everything else, we need to put back into Australia Zoo and conservation. And for 4 years, we made nothing. And then we started making money, and then we signed with Discovery, and then we did pretty well, and never had that conversation again. Everything's gone back into expanding Australia Zoo, purchasing habitat to protect wildlife, starting a wildlife hospital, and all the work that we're doing. So I was very proud of Steve that he never changed. Sometimes if he was filming some far-flung location, he'd call and say, "This beautiful hotel room is wasted on me, mate. You should be here." It's good fun. As we all know, there's 3 important marketing strategies that we all employ. One is what is unique about your business. What's different about your business than any other business, whether it's true or whether the other business is saying they do it, but they kind of don't. So you find out what's exactly unique about your business. And then, kind of a Walt Disney theory, don't depend on a single line of income. Disney does this really well. They have parks, they have movies, they have merchandise. Disney knows to divide and conquer and raise your profile. So when I first went to the zoo, I decided I would be the accounts department and the marketing department. And I also mowed the lawns, and it was really fun. It was fun being able to work with the wildlife and kind of do everything. But when it came to marketing, I said, once a week we need to do a press release, and we'll come up with something. And sometimes it was, did you know that giant tortoises love to eat hibiscus? And we grow hibiscus at the zoo. And then the Glasshouse Country News covered the story. So it's important to do that and not be too big for your britches either. If the Glasshouse Country News is excited about doing a story, you do it with as much passion and appreciation as if it were the New York Times. Treat everyone like that. And one of the most important things that Australia's good at, and not everywhere in the world is being philanthropic. So in your business, be sure to give back, because then it seems like the universe rewards you for that. And when you pick something, you can't say, I'll just donate to Rotary once a month and that'll help. No, you need to be a Rotarian. So whatever you choose that's your passion for a charity, you need to make sure that you actually live, breathe, and believe it. That's incredibly important. Our most unique thing was Steve. Nobody could duplicate him or probably wanted to, and he was a one of a kind. He was a force of nature, challenging to keep up with, but definitely to this day is still part of Australia Zoo and what we do. To diversify our business, we began filming, and today our documentaries are seen in over 200 countries and territories around the world, which is very special. And we really engaged with the media. So the media is wonderful and important. And I kind of feel sorry for them because look how it's changed. When you used to engage the media, you'd spend a few days with someone, you'd flesh out a story, they'd check all their facts. Nowadays, I have to have the story in by 2, and everyone with an iPhone is a camera operator getting a story that's on the news tonight. So everything has changed dramatically. But media is also kind of like a grizzly bear. As long as they're on your side, they're an awesome buddy to have, but you kind of never know when they're going to turn around and eat you. So you got to keep that in mind as well. You have to be able to take the heat. I remember one time Bindi and I were talking about this, and she enthusiastically said, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the chicken. I said, I think it's kitchen, but okay. You just stay out of that chicken, girl. And
Stay out of the chicken.
Stay out of that chicken. And after Steve had his accident, it was something that when you work in a dangerous type of job, it's not totally unexpected. But all of us do. Every time you get in the car and drive to work, you're in a dangerous situation. So for someone who was 44 years old to die so suddenly, who was so healthy, it was a lot for us to wrap our heads around. And he was in the beautiful North Queensland reef area filming, and we were in Tasmania, which made it even more difficult as well. At that time, Bindi was 8 years old, Robert was 2. It was truly an overwhelming moment of time. And you come to these crossroads, and everybody does it in business. whether you're a couple working in a business and through death or divorce you lose someone, or the business is facing challenges and the dynamics of your business have changed. Laws change, all kinds of things can change. And all of us have stood at those crossroads and thought, what should I do? Because on one hand, if you just roll everything up and sell it all off, you can have a tidy sum of money, go somewhere. I could have retired at the age of 42, raised my kids and not worried about it. But it seemed to me that when Steve and I would talk, he was more than a person with a great business. You know, he was a man on a mission, and he would say to me, I don't care if anyone remembers me. I want them to remember my message. And I challenge you today to think about that with your business. What is your legacy? How does your business continue without you? Because I've learned that none of us are indispensable. The business can go on. And what is your message? What do you want to see continue that you're trying to achieve? Because it's more than that one single business. You have a philosophy, you have a passion. That's why every person in here is successful. And I remember Bindi came to me about 3 weeks after Steve died, and she said to me, when are we going to start filming again? And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because for kids, you kind of want something normal again. So growing up, when Steve said to me, if we have children, I want to make sure nothing changes. First, I laughed hysterically because every parent-to-be says that. Oh, my life won't change. And then it totally changes. And that's the way it is. But we actually took Bindi and Robert with us everywhere. Bindi was 6 days old when she went on her first film shoot, and 10 days old for our first overseas trip to the US. Robert was a month old when we started filming, and I think most famously when your dad enlisted your help in the Croc show in the Crocaseum when you were a month old. That was really awesome. So that's what Bindi said. She said, I'd like to continue. And that was the point for me to say, you're right. We need to continue. Our marketing department said to me, what do we do? Do we roll up all the posters and continue on as if Steve was never here? Do we mention him respectfully in the past? And I thought about it, and I said to our team, carry on as if he were still here. And that sounds kind of strange, but it actually works. And when people come to Australia Zoo, they say, you know, it sounds kind of weird, but it feels like Steve's still here. You know, we treat the animals the same. We are very hands-on and interactive with the wildlife. We want to keep his mission and message alive. And that's what's so important. And I encourage you, when you know your business, and I hear a lot of people here say what they're all about, and if it's happy, shiny people, make sure they're happy and shiny for always, you know? Not just when this particular team is in charge or things are going well. I really love hearing that. Right now, we're interestingly engaged with the Queensland government about some legislation that was recently released about harvesting crocodile eggs from the wild for the boutique leather trade. And it's not real good according to the 16 years of research we've done with crocodiles from the University of Queensland. And you know what? If I don't say anything about it, my life is a lot easier. But if I stand up and say, I'm actually a conservationist, this is my charity, this is what I do, and it actually is important, some people are going to say, thanks for letting me know, we're on your side, let's protect our environment. And some people are going to not be as nice. But I want to encourage you, when you take that stand for what you believe in, have the courage. Sometimes it's scary to do what you know is the right thing and the most important in your business. But I want to encourage you, if it's a little bit scary, you're probably doing the right thing. And we will get that legislation overturned. I am eternally hopeful for a future where we engage in the non-consumptive use of wildlife. So we've got beautiful rivers and incredible wildlife and clean air and an awesome place for everyone to come, because people do love coming here for our beautiful people and weather and blue skies and awesome wildlife. And there is a place in the world that's only 800 acres. And if it were to be developed, it would be worth over $300 billion. And even though there's not a single endangered species in that 800 acres, it will never be developed because it's Central Park in New York. So even if you're not a conservationist from a tourism point of view, you need that green space. You need to know you're always going to have barramundi and mud crabs and the beautiful things we love in Australia. And that's what I'm passionate about. I would like to show you a video of Steve, just to give you an idea of where he's coming from and why Robert and Bindi are so important within all of this.
Is there anything in this world that would want to make me give away what I'm doing now? Yes. Yes, there is. When my children can take the football that I call wildlife conservation and run it up. When they're ready to run up our mission, I will gladly step aside. And I guarantee you it'll be the proudest moment of my life. And my job will be done then, and only then will I know that I have achieved my ultimate goal. To be able to stand aside and let them run up my mission.
Cool beans. And he rocked those shorts too, let me tell you. I didn't do too bad with your dad. But Robert, I just would love you to have the opportunity to say a few words and talk about your perspective on tourism, which is pretty special.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mum.
No worries.
That video is always so special to Bindi and myself, because really that's what we've dedicated our lives to, is making sure that Dad's legacy, his work, everything that he strived for continues. Because, you know, I think that we're very lucky in Australia to have what we have, the most incredible natural spaces, the most amazing wildlife, the people here. We really are very lucky, and we need to keep that. You know, I feel very, very lucky throughout my life getting to go along with Mum and Dad in the early days, and still to this day travelling so much all over the world. It's been an amazing privilege, it really has. And it definitely has given me the perspective just to see how lucky we are in Australia, for sure. And, you know, growing up in Australia Zoo, tourism has always been a big part of our lives, of course, and a big passion of ours and of mine is to bring people to our region and to really showcase this place that we have. So, you know, I think that my biggest passion will always be spreading the conservation message. I think it's really in my blood. It's not just what we do, it's who we are. And along the way doing that, I've certainly gotten to experience some amazing things, which I'm very thankful for. At the moment, we are filming season 2 of our new show called Crikey, It's the Irwins. Crikey, It's the Irwins. It's really exciting. We're having a great time. We were thrilled with how season 1 went. It was really successful, especially in the US and UK. And season 2 just started production a couple of weeks ago, which is just awesome for us. And the show is all about what we do for conservation. It's kind of a backstage pass into our lives and the amazing keepers that we have at the zoo. Our team is absolutely wonderful. You can see some of our khaki crew are here today. We're very, very lucky in that regard. We've got some amazing animals as well. And, you know, another big part of the show is also showcasing our region. It's showing the Sunshine Coast, the Glasshouse Mountains, this amazing location that we have. And so this has been a lot of fun, and that's our passion. It's what we love to do, and it's certainly something that I'll continue to do, I think, for the rest of my life. So another thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is something that I've been doing for a few years that actually surprisingly works in with tourism, I've found. So over the last couple of years, I have been doing a show in the United States called The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and I have gotten to kind of become the animal presenter on that show, and I absolutely love it. It's amazing, it really is. Getting to reach a new audience in New York City and really bring our message to so many people is just wonderful, and it's definitely a lot of fun. Oh, it's so much fun. Isn't that just awesome? It's so funny going on those shows and seeing, in Australia, we've got so many amazing animals, and you've got giant huntsman spiders that, you kind of, to an American, that's a really foreign thing to think about animals in your house. Like, that's just crazy. So to bring wildlife over there is you never know what's going to happen. And working with comedians, especially like Jimmy and Kevin, it's very unpredictable, but a lot of fun for sure. So it's interesting. Doing things like that is actually really important. And we found that whenever you go overseas and you reach a new audience, you kind of tap into a new group of people. And though not directly, people kind of start to associate you with, like for us, they see us and they think Australia. They think Australia Zoo. And that's been a really great tool for us. So it really is important to reach a new demographic, and The Tonight Show certainly allowed me to do that. Not just to be talking to conservationists and other like-minded people who love animals, but people that might be a little less keen to cuddle a tarantula. So it's been really fun. So I also wanted to mention another thing that's really important to me, which is photography, and that's something that Mum touched on. And photography for me has been a great way to really tell a story. I think with the field that we're in, with wildlife conservation, being able to go out on so many amazing expeditions and capture the moments that you have it's just so much fun. But then also to share that with such a large audience is great. And hopefully my goal is to help people kind of connect with the natural world, even if they're not directly, they're not going out to Africa and watching lions hunt down a giraffe. They can see those images and they can be inspired. And these days, everyone is a photographer. Everyone. With iPhones, with the technology that we have now, everyone has the ability to tell a story. With social media, it's even more so. Everyone is sharing everything. It seems like every little detail of people's lives are on social media. And I think that as in the tourism industry, we can definitely capitalise on this. And at Australia Zoo, that's been one of the most important things to us, is social media and encouraging that. It's really interesting to see because, at Australia Zoo, whenever someone tags us in a post, that's one person. But if everyone's doing that, it really adds up, and you can have that online presence. It's very, very important, I think. So I also kind of lastly just wanted to touch on really how lucky we are in Australia, because Australians often, I speak to so many of my peers, so many people that I know that love to travel overseas, and they're always going to places like Bali, or they're experiencing things in foreign countries, which is great. But I always encourage people, especially young people, to get out and look at your own backyard first, to go into the places within Australia, really experience this country. I've been lucky enough to see so much of Australia, and I feel very blessed to have done that. And I certainly encourage all Australians to really explore even more. And I think as I get older, hopefully I can expand my platform to reach more people internationally as well, and get them to this beautiful country. Because as we all know, Australia is the best place to live. It's such an amazing place with so much to offer, and I think it's really all about keeping that in the forefront of people's minds. So this is my passion. I'll certainly be doing that into the future. And like at Australia Zoo, we've just started doing expeditions all around the country, so international tourists get to come here and go to places like the Great Barrier Reef. They can join us on our crocodile research expeditions. They can really go out not just to the cities, which are beautiful, but also these more remote locations, places like Winton, to go out and experience the Australian age of dinosaurs. This is really, really important, and I think tourism, as we all know, is a really great tool, and that's why Australia, wherever you go in the world, everyone loves Australia, because of the tourism opportunities that we have here. So I wanted to thank you guys lastly so much for having us. And yeah, I think we might have a little bit of time to take
I don't
questions.
know.
I'm not sure.
We might have
we talked the legs off a chair, but thank you very much, guys.
30 seconds. Yay.
Yeah.
Oh no, just fabulous. Terri and Robert, if we do have a few minutes, just have
I'd
a
be
seat
happy
on the
to.
No
couch.
worries, for sure.
Can I tell you how I do this? So here's what I do. I've brought a couple Crikey magazines, and we talk to school groups, and I'll say to the kids, if you are brave enough to ask me a question, I'll give you a present.
Oh, fabulous.
So the kids go, how old are you? I'm like, 54, here's your magazine.
Have a seat.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for sharing so much of yourselves with us.
Thanks so
I
much.
can't help. I was thinking about this as a mum, sitting in the audience, listening to you in particular, Terri, and then hearing Robert speak and the video of you on Jimmy Fallon. I think it's hilarious that you're saying, "I'm doing my best to get people to come to Australia." It's like, well, if you're on Jimmy Fallon, that's a pretty good start.
Thank you.
But as a mother of teenagers, and Robert being so young when you lost Steve, you've ended up, we all know nature and nurture. There's only so much that you can do, particularly once a child discovers free will, to have them be as articulate and as confident, and to have jumped on board of this with you cannot be from any other place other than a genuine passion and a genuine involvement. You couldn't have made these kids do this if you'd tried. As a mother of 3 teenagers, I know how wonderful that this legacy has been able to continue, because both Bindi and Robert share your passion, your enthusiasm, and your ability to speak.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. And I know when we'd been married 6 years, and Steve said, he fire stares. And just so women know, men fire stare. It might be watching the footy. Steve actually went in the backyard and built a fire. So they kind of collect their thoughts. It's okay to let them do that. They're not ignoring you. And he came running in after fire staring one night and said, "We have to have children." And I said, "What? Why now?" And he said, "Who are we going to leave all of this to if not our children?" And I said, "You do know there's no guarantee that your kids are going to like what you do or want to do what you do." He's like, "Nope, we'll have kids and they'll love this and they'll take over the zoo and this." And the thing that bugged me about Steve was he was always right. And you look at Robert and he looks like Steve. It's weird. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Well, you did. You lucked out. It could have gone either way, let me tell you.
Just really glad
But
Bindi didn't get that part. Yeah. You're a handsome man.
Oh, well, thank
But
you.
it wouldn't have worked on Bindi.
No.
Yeah.
I also just want to say how grateful I am to have grown up. I mean, growing up in a zoo is pretty cool, I have to admit. And to have the upbringing that I've had from such an early age with mum and dad, their passion for making the world a better place, that's what inspires me every day. I mean, that's why I am so passionate about what I get to do. They definitely sparked that for me. So I feel very lucky.
But it also seems, Robert, that at a very young age, you're also understanding that you are part of a huge global brand. And we talked about brand this morning, and Tourism Australia plus brand, and you guys are up there with Dundee. I think that's where they put the Irwin family, that brand, and Australia Zoo in terms of recognition, particularly in the US market. That's a huge gift, and also I don't want to use the word burden, because it's not a burden, but obviously something that you're acutely aware of.
Yeah.
From now.
Absolutely. I feel like we're in a great opportunity to have the platform that we do. And to be able to reach a large audience is just wonderful. I mean, you can get your message out to so many people. And of course, it definitely does have its challenges in ways, but I really think that everyone is put on the planet for a reason, and we all have the opportunity to make a difference. So I definitely feel that I kind of feel a responsibility to continue my family's work, and I think I'm in a really great position, and I love living in Australia Zoo. I love just when I walk around the zoo and watching people have that, it's almost, you can see that connection with wildlife. You can see it's just like a click. They'll come in, and whether it's a crocodile or a koala or whatever it is, there's some certain animal that they just click with, and that it lights up your day. So I feel so honored to be part of that, part of a business that has a global effect, but has such an effect on the individual as well.
Absolutely, because we know that tourism does exactly that. It's those life moments that will stay with that
Absolutely.
person forever.
For sure.
Terri has 2 magazines to give away, so we should make sure that...
We
don't
already
bother
know 'em.
asking her how old she is.
Yes.
We already know.
54. Try again. Favorite color's green. There you go.
Terri, Robert, much respect to you both for everything that you do. Jonathan Fisher from the National Trust, Crumburn Wildlife Sanctuary, Crumburn Wildlife Hospital, so I got a bit of an understanding of where you guys are coming from. We've heard that nature and wildlife, the environment here in Australia, is one of the main reasons that people come to Australia. It drives visitation. Conservation is an expensive business, and we don't always see necessarily an immediate return, or even see a return at all if it's out in the wild. From your travels, Terri, is there a place in the world, is there an area in the world which you've seen we can share perhaps a model where tourism can help fund conservation that we are not doing here as well in Australia or Queensland? So is there something that you've seen where we can better connect all the people in this room who live on tourism and get something back into conservation? Can you share any ideas?
And it's a really good question, and we all need to be involved because it affects us all. Like I was saying about Africa, that's why we worked with South Africa to change the mindset and work on exploiting wildlife for people to see and remain intact. And I think here in Australia it's a little different, because you go on safari and you're like, watch out, the echidna's stalking that ant. It's majestic. You know, it's like, it's different wildlife here. But we still have this incredible environment that we can all share in. So I find that when I stay at an accommodation that showcases what they're doing for the environment, I appreciate that. And because I'm an American from America, although I've been here 26 years, I understand that Americans love spending their money in a way that's going to benefit. So in other words, at Australia Zoo, a portion of all of the retail profits go back into conservation. So people go, if I'm going to shop for Christmas presents and I do it here, the money also goes to help wildlife. So if you're doing things like that where you can say, this is how our business is going green, this is how we're supporting this conservation project, this is how we've gone solar, this is our recycling program. You know, notices, please turn off the tap, limit your shower, help conserve water. All of these things I see in businesses everywhere. And I know, for example, with Coca-Cola at Australia Zoo, we were having trouble affording the cost of recycling, sending the trucks down to Brisbane every week, and they sponsored that. So that's a way of business that you wouldn't normally think. Coca-Cola, I think conservation. They were actually spending 6 figures a year to help us with our recycling program. So if that's kind of helpful, everyone can do something. And if you want to pick a charity that's into conservation, certainly I'll throw Wildlife Warriors out there for you to think about as well. But it's a really good question, and we all have to get involved. People appreciate it.
Thank you. One final question, one last magazine to give away. Over in the far end of the room.
A land far, far away.
Far, far away.
I never thought I'd end up in Australia. This is so cool.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Thank you.
From Oregon to Australia.
Thank you. I'm from University of Queensland, and I appreciate your story with the wildlife. And in recent days, we have some assessment and a project about the developing economics in terms of the wildlife. And so I want to know, from the industry people perspective, how do you think the respectable tourism behavior, especially in some of the developing countries? Because, for example, in Thailand, the people will, riding the elephant, or some the tourists will buy the snake wines. So how do you look into this behavior, and how do you look into these situations? Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's definitely, wherever you go, especially in the industry that we're in the zoological industry, there's some places that are doing really good things, and then, as you said, there are also places that aren't necessarily doing the right thing by wildlife in a captive situation. And I definitely think that these days zoos are becoming, and should be, just a vessel for conservation, for not just showing animals on display and getting people interested in them, but also giving back to conservation as well. And that's something that I think is really important to, as Mum was alluding to, is supporting places that do give back. So we've always definitely felt passionate about that wherever we go, to try and find places that are doing the right thing by their animals as well. Do you have anything else to add on
just
that?
that it's really important in this day and age, because every industry is like that. You know, we've stayed in accommodation places where you go, mental note, I'm never staying here again. And it's the same with tourism and wildlife. It has to be respectful and responsible, and we have to work together. We work with the Zoological Association of Australia to help people in Australasia do things better and more responsibly, and with that in consideration. But yes, absolutely. If you are in a location where somebody is not being respectful or responsible with wildlife, that's the place you don't want to spend your money. So if there are places doing the right thing, I encourage you to enjoy having a selfie with a quokka, because the quokka's genuinely sitting there. No one's duct taped it to a tree. It's actually happily sitting there, and you're fine to have a selfie with it. So that's the thing. We're so far from nature that sometimes people inadvertently engage with the wrong thing just to have a special experience. So you're right. We have to start changing and being responsible and loving and kind, and making sure that your money's being spent wisely as well.
That's it, the power of the dollar. Please put your hands together for Terri and Robert Irwin. Thank